Hey, welcome back, everyone. Super excited for to have my guest on here, Brian DeMint. He is author of two of the most recent books I've read, Bitcoin Evangelism and the Parallel, the Bitcoin Social Layer. Also part of the Orange Pill app, which I'm sure he'll talk about that as well today. Brian, it's really an honor to have you on here, especially after your interview with Saifuddin. Not to step down quite a few notches, but having you on here is a thrill, and as somebody who have read your books and been motivated by your books, and I'm using the Orange Pill app, SAS mining. I started looking into that after I heard what you were doing with that. So another great mining effort. But welcome to the program. Glad to have you on here.
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate it, man. And yeah, no, getting to do interviews with any kind of Bitcoiner is always really fun. I know you're like, oh, it's it's a step down from safety. It's so enjoyable to talk to Bitcoiners. I mean, that's honestly why I do my what I do with Orange Pill app, because as you've been an app user, you recognize the same thing, is that it doesn't matter whether you're talking to Saifuddin. Obviously, like, he has a way of articulating things that the rest of us don't have. So it's a unique experience being able to talk to different guys. But he doesn't have military experience, and he doesn't have some of the breadth of seeing real world boots on the ground, literal boots on the ground, banking the unbanked type of thing. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be immersed into a community with so many different backgrounds. Like, it really is like this really beautiful picture, this tapestry of the Bitcoin social layer. So, man, it's truly an honor.
No, thank you. And you've kind of touched on it. This podcast is generally we focus on entrepreneurs, we focus on military, both active duty and retiring, because there's that transition gap that a lot of military, when they spend their whole career on the military side, and then it's like speaking a totally different language when they come to the civilian side. So there's usually a gap in knowledge on business, on entrepreneur, how to start your own business, how to write your own book, all these little things that, for some people who've grew up in that world, it's more, second nature. And then it's also, like you said, I mean, a lot of us who've grew up, I've served in Iraq most of my career. We've been at war most of my career. And when you see some of the things you talk about in your book with the unbanked, we've seen that firsthand. We've seen families who have nothing, no hope for the future, everything they have destroyed, and any money that would come their way is easily confiscatable by locals, if you know what I mean. And so I think this is a great point that you touch on your book. But can you, before we dive into everything, can you give us maybe a little bit of background about yourself, who you are, what you do, and about the books? Yeah.
I've been an entrepreneur myself since I was 22. The business, I'm 38 now. My wife and I, we started a wellness company where we do cold plunges and infrared saunas and red light therapy and sunbeds and all that kind of stuff. We started that when we were 22, and we're still running that to this day. It's been a really cool business, and it's really been interesting to see the overlap and the synergy between this thing that was completely separate from, in my mind, wellness and kind of health and holistic living and that sort of thing. My wife's like a total hippie when it comes to essential oils and organic eating and all that kind of stuff. And just that realm seemed so segregated and isolated from, 2013 when I started studying Bitcoin. And then just over the years, there seemed to be this overlap of, like, the diet person was on a Bitcoin podcast that I was watching, and then we'd sit down and we get to watch this together. It's your person and my person. And that's been really neat. It's almost like there's this convergence that was happening in my life that I didn't know. And even being an entrepreneur and having a business that was relatively successful, it allowed me to, when we got from having to work the front desk of our business every day to be able to step back and to be more in terms of like a CEO role of my company, it gave me the freedom and flexibility to start asking, well, what are we going to do with our company treasury, right? As opposed to just living hand to mouth with our business and just getting to where we're just paying our bills. Now we've got to think about how do we store our value and things like that. And so that is a really, fortunate role, very blessed role I got to be in. Of I got time to sit there and listen and read and do those types of things, and that's what enabled me to understand Bitcoin and study Bitcoin. And so that's been huge. That's been a tremendous journey. I came to Bitcoin initially just really very much as a skeptic. I was looking for better money, or I guess I was asking questions about money. I wasn't looking for better money. I think I was asking the question, like the Robert Breedlove question of what is money, that type of thing. And so in that process, I came across Bitcoin. The people I knew that had dabbled in it were really like number go up guys that only knew how to talk about Bitcoin in terms of, yeah, it's gonna make you a bunch of money, because they bought in at 100 and it went to 1,000 at one point, and then it had gone back down to like low 200s by the time I was kind of starting in it. And I remember thinking that you guys, like, I really respect you guys in a bunch of other areas in your entrepreneurship and things like that. But this thing's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. All the things that we lob, all the accusations we lob at Bitcoin. But then they challenged me like, well, why don't you learn more about it? They didn't even really know more about it, but they just challenged me. I was like, great. Yeah, I'm going to learn more about it and tell you guys how dumb you are. And then through that process of being skeptical, it really was eye-opening. So I tried to challenge it on being a pyramid scheme, or I think I really went down the tulip mania route, which everybody does the tulip mania route. And it's such a weak argument. And that was one of the big ones that won me over, because it's the exact opposite of tulip mania. If anybody remembers tulip mania, the reason the value of tulips went up was because there actually was a scarcity, right? You could only have so many tulips in one season, because there's a function of how many did you grow last season, and that caps you at how many tulips you have this season. The problem with tulip mania was the next growing season, people were able to plant tulip bulbs like crazy, and then there wasn't a scarcity, and there was an abundance issue. There was an oversaturation of tulips, and so it was an inflation in the tulip supply that was actually what caused tulip mania as we know it. And so that was my challenge towards Bitcoin. And then it was in the study of Bitcoin that I realized that, like, no, digital scarcity is kind of a really big deal. And it's kind of the fix to tulip mania. And if we're going to say anything's tulip mania, the closest thing that we can see is fiat money. And so that was really the big kicker for me, that sent me down this road. Then later, I think that Andreas Antonopoulos really just nailed that hammer home when I was listening to him. I think I had bought a little bit of Bitcoin at this time, but when the light bulb, the orange pill really took off for me was when he said how revolutionary of an idea digital scarcity was. Like, I'd kind of wrapped my head around scarcity, but digital scarcity being this even bigger idea, that before 2009, we didn't have a way to cap digital things. Everything that was digital, music, numbers, anything could be replicated endlessly. So this revolutionary idea of Bitcoin was that we can now cap those things that are digital. The world's going digital. And so if the world's going digital, we could never really have digital money. The last holdout would be digital money, because digital things, they could be made infinite, and that directly violates the law of value. You cannot have something infinite that is valuable or that has much value. And so you could not have digital money. Those things seem to be in conflict with one another until Bitcoin comes along and solves that problem of having things that are digital and also valuable.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, a lot of that research that I've done as well, and I appreciate your book, Bitcoin Evangelism, for that. And if anyone who really wants to understand Bitcoin and just get an idea of it, and also try to help, you say orange pill, your family, your friends, I think Bitcoin Evangelism does a great job of that as well, and kind of breaks down. It's, you don't have to be, a cryptologist. You don't have to be a finance major. After reading your book, you can understand that, and you can help, bring other people along, help learn it. I mean, because, I think it's almost impossible to learn everything about Bitcoin, because it seems like it's always evolving. There's always something new. And when you talk about digital scarcity, one thing that sticks in my head is what Jack Mallers said. When we talk about mining, for example, you can mine Bitcoin from the ground, you can mine gold from the ground, but you mine Bitcoin from time. And so that really hit home, because you can't just as you release that Bitcoin, it's not something that we can put more energy into.
Right.
Like we can gold. We can put more energy into mining more gold. You can't do that with Bitcoin. You will still get that finite amount of number, whatever it's set at, like 3.125 right now for every block that's mined. And I found that very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that Jack Mahler's quote, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that worked out in my head. It helped me explain it to other people too. And so from there, you wrote Bitcoin Evangelism, and then did you go? Was Orange Pill app next, or was that something that came later on?
Yeah. So in kind of my promoting of Bitcoin evangelism, like for anybody that doesn't know my background, I like I said, I started dabbling in Bitcoin, probably started studying it in 2013, started buying it in early 2014. And then the ICO boom comes along 2016. And when a lot of people went down that altcoin road, I did as well. And I remember when my friends, I had orange pilled some friends, and then those friends started getting into Ethereum. That was like it was like when your parents tell you not to hang out with bad influences. That was like my crypto journey. And so I had orange pilled these people. They bought Bitcoin, but then they were like jealous that I'd gotten in at $250, and guess they got in at $900, and they felt like they missed the boat. They were so mad. So they bought a couple Bitcoin, and then they're like, but this Ethereum is whatever it was at this time, because it wasn't $15 still, but it was maybe 20, 30 bucks. Like Ethereum was pretty low. And then they were buying like Civic and these ICOs, and I didn't know what an ICO was. And they told, and so I went down that road and then got like fascinated by that. And it's like, oh, well, Bitcoin solves the problem of money, but then blockchain is going to solve all the other problems in the world, and it's going to solve voting, and it's going to, and perhaps there's some applications that might be built onto Bitcoin at some point. I don't understand the technical side enough to completely refute that. But what I will say is that I know that the solutions that were being built at that time absolutely did not solve those problems. And so I started working for a project that was called Athenium. And what we were trying to do was decentralize education. And it was an interesting process. I worked there for almost 3 years in marketing. But I saw some stuff in the crypto industry that we can talk about it more if you want. But it was a very eye-opening experience. And so I just resigned one day. I said, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was. And so, I'm not going to lend my name to it anymore. So I became a Bitcoin maxi through going through and working in crypto. And that's when I decided to write my book. It was about that same time. And so really nobody in Bitcoin knew who I was. There were some people in crypto who knew I was, but really nobody in Bitcoin. So when I wrote my book, I was just a freshy newbie. There was no audience ready and willing, except for my mom and my wife, that were ready to read my book. And so I was promoting the book, and one of the things that I was doing was I went to Pacific Bitcoin, and then that's where I met Mateo for Orange Pill app, signed up for Orange Pill app as a user, and that kind of started that snowball. That was almost 2 years ago now when Orange Pill app launched. And it was as soon as I wrote Bitcoin Evangelism, I had the idea. I knew that like the next logical step was parallel. I didn't have the name for it, but just this idea of the parallel economy, the circular economy, the parallel system, whatever you want to call it. That was kind of this idea I had in my mind. It seems like the first thing you need to do is understand Bitcoin. And that was what I was trying to accomplish in Bitcoin Evangelism. And then the second book would be, what do you do with that knowledge? Like, what do you do now that you understand it? That was kind of how I always saw it. But it wasn't until the work that we were doing at Orange Pill app was trying to connect Bitcoiners. That's why I was so drawn to it, because I'd had this idea in my head, this passion for the parallel system, for the Bitcoin social layer, as Mateo coined it. I didn't come up with that term. That was Mateo, the founder of Orange Pill app, coined that term, the Bitcoin social layer, because yes, that's a missing element. That's in the past, that's been a missing element of Bitcoin, is this strong connection of plebs in real life, right? There's people, Bitcoiners that would go to conferences and they'd meet up. There was Bitcoiners that would do local meetups. There was kind of these segmented things, but we didn't have a one-stop shop for like, how do we make sure that I know other Bitcoiners in real life? And so, I mean, we could talk about this more, but I just think that, and I talk about that a little bit in parallel, but I think this next kind of stage, or this next era of humanity, it's going to be very difficult to decide if the person you're talking to on the other end of either a video call or a chat or a DM or whatever is actually a real person. I mean, think about the time preference of an AI bot that's trying to scam you. They don't care if they need to chat to you every day. They could chat to you every day for 9 months, 2 years, 3 years to gain your confidence in order to eventually scam you. And it could be a 100% AI generated text message. It could be a very compelling deep fake, as convincing as it is that you and I are talking right now. Right. So at the end of the day, if we have not met the person on the other end of that line in real life at some point, all I have to do is I have to have at least met them one time to verify that I know that they're a real person. And so this idea was in my head. And then all of a sudden, this app comes along, Orange Pill app, that's doing that. That was the core competency of Orange Pill app. That was the vision Mateo had. That perfectly lined up with the vision that I had. So, we worked and I helped Mateo build Orange Pill app. As far as like build the marketing, I didn't build the app. That we have some really smart developers for that.
Right.
I don't think they let me in the development room. But as far as what we've built with Orange Pill app, and then that it's really gained some momentum. We have over 10,000 users around the world, Bitcoiners, like high signal Bitcoiners, no bots. Think about that, a social network with no bots, no fake people, nothing. It's like everybody that's on that app is absolutely a real person that you could go somewhere in the world and meet up with them. Like that's a pretty big deal. I don't think there's ever been an app anywhere in any industry that's existed like that. And it's just growing every day. But as we built that, I talked to Mateo. I was like, you know what? I really want some time to focus on and write this book, because this is a passion I had before Orange Pill app. And now that we've actually seen it growing and see it germinating, I would love to be able to write about this a little bit more. And so I had the full blessing of everybody on the Orange Pill app team to, kind of sit back. I still help promote Orange Pill app and things like that. And I'm back into like the marketing role there. But for about 4 months, I was just writing every single day. And that was my main focus. And so that the goal is to propel the parallel economy and the Bitcoin social layer forward. And I think it's a big idea, but it's also something that I think people like yourself, Joe. I mean, you've been very, very kind in the way that you shared your feedback about the book. I think that guys like you share that passion for it. And so that definitely gives me the encouragement to know that we're on to something.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words too. And as a military guy, right, you kind of are you're in a community, right? And as you're separating, or when you leave that, sometimes you don't speak the same language as your neighbor who's not in the military. And I found that the cool part about the Orange Pill app is, one, like you said, they're not bots, right? You join the app, you throw some stats that way to join as part of the membership. You have a merchant link where you can find Bitcoiners who have businesses who accept Bitcoin. You have event meetups. If person replies to you, like you can connect. Genuinely, it's a real person. Because I have found that's difficult in other apps, like as you're meeting people, especially since I've started this, as you reach out to make contact to say, hey, I love your story, I'd love to talk to you. You don't get a reply very often, because, and rightfully so. A lot of, I mean, even I'm a nobody on Twitter, and I get, hundreds of bots asking me to, click this link and you can, hit my airdrop and all stuff. so I totally get it. It's why I'm very appreciative of what you do, and replying. So thank you. But and so it brings me back to why I think this is important, because guys like myself who when you are leaving the military, and as a Bitcoiner, you don't know. If you're talking to someone who doesn't understand Bitcoin, right? You obviously want to orange pill them and get them on board. But it's nice to talk to someone without having that 15 to 20 minutes of opening, like, this is not why I'm crazy. This isn't a Ponzi scheme. This is why it's kind of nice to just start off all on the same foot and to kind of go from there. Yeah. And so, with that, as you talk that you wrote Parallel, can you dive into it? I know this is kind of like your idea of building this social layer through the Orange Pill app and making sure this kind of grows. Do you see this kind of after you've written this book, are there communities in the area or in the United States? I mean, obviously we know El Salvador and others. I mean, where do you see this growing initially before it starts taking off more further?
Yeah, surprisingly, and this is true for like our highest density of Orange Pill app users, and then it's also for the people that are really stimulating that parallel economy the most. It seems to be in Canada, of all places. And I think it's because they went through so much. The Bitcoin community was like, it's the hardened, battle-tested Bitcoiners up there in Canada. I know BTC Sessions, they have a Saturday, I think it's in Calgary, where they have, it's like a market, and everything there you can buy with sats. They have an interesting take on it. They allow cash as well. So you can go and you can spend fiat cash there. And the reason why they do that is it's like a gateway drug for people that want to spend cash, because that's that same mindset. Freedom loving people who want to spend cash, but then they're walking around this place and every table says they accept Bitcoin. So they're really almost like kind of evangelizing for Bitcoin through their parallel system. But we're seeing some stuff like that pop up. And I'm getting more DMs about just like, hey, just want to let you know, I know that you really care about this stuff, and I'm starting a meetup of local Bitcoin businesses, and they're trying to germinate that. They're trying to really foster that portion of it, and it's in a bunch of different areas, and that's one of the things that we kind of define at the beginning of the book is the difference between, at least my definition of the difference between a circular economy and a parallel economy. I would define a circular economy as kind of a more localized economy of Bitcoiners, or like a localized economy that operates to where you can account and you can take care of your immediate goods and service needs through that local economy. And then the parallel economy would be kind of like the federation or the aggregation of all those little circular economies. So the circular would be like the micro, and the parallel would be the macro. And it's an interesting thing to kind of break down, because we do so much commerce online. So I would say online commerce is part of the greater parallel economy. But there is something important about that small local economy. I think a lot of people think because I can transact in Bitcoin, and then I can get, I can go on websites and have things delivered, that's the only way that I really use Bitcoin. I would challenge people, do that, but like anywhere you can spend Bitcoin is great, but seek out the local as well. It makes you a little bit more anti-fragile, right? Saifedean was talking about this when I did his podcast, and he was talking about how the people that get hurt the most in hyperinflation are the people the most dependent on the supply chain, which is kind of everybody. But the wealthy tend to be able to have stored things or to plan ahead or have an abundance. The people that are most dependent on the supply chain are the people that have enough money to buy a few days of groceries at a time, right? If you were able to buy a month of groceries, then you can withstand much more than somebody that only has 2 days of groceries in their pantry. Right. And so having a local circular economy makes you more anti-fragile, because if you're 20 or 30 miles away from a rancher that accepts Bitcoin, that just adds a degree of resilience to your lifestyle than if you're only able to get it. Like I'm in Southern California and I buy meat from the Midwest, and that's great. I like it. I like this guy, Jake Steaks. I love it. Great grass-fed meats. And I've met him in person. I met him at a beef initiative thing in Georgia. And so I like being able to support Bitcoiners wherever they're at, but I also know a local rancher, and we get some of our milk and our cheese from him. And I intentionally buy some stuff from one guy and some stuff from another guy, because I see my economic activity as ways to build relationships. I do that in business. I buy from different suppliers for business reasons. And if one supplier is ever short, the other supplier tends to have it. And so in business, and not even speaking in Bitcoin terms, but just in my regular old wellness business before it was a Bitcoin business, I did that anyways. And that made us less reliant on the whims of supply chain, on the whims of an individual supplier that isn't operating their business well. And so that's the importance of the local circular economy versus just participating in the macro economy. But every element that you have, every building block you add to your arsenal makes your family a little bit safer, makes your family a little bit more resilient to the worst possible outcome. And guess what? I don't think the worst possible outcome is going to happen. And if it doesn't, great. Then I just know more people that accept Bitcoin, and I know more people with whom I can interact. So it's a 100% win-win scenario. And I don't think we need to go to doom and gloom in order to convince people, but it's important to understand that that reality is possible. And so if it does happen, why not just prepare and be safe? Because the alternative is, like, if I prepare and nothing bad happens, then life's gravy too. That's good.
Yeah. No, I love the more resilient, and having we're not necessarily focused on large organizations, right? Like to bring it back to military, right? The military industrial complex. I think during World War II, and I'm gonna paraphrase this, but there were maybe 50 to 100 military supply companies. Now there's like 5.
Wow.
Like Raytheon, like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and probably 2 others. So, when you hear stories about maybe lack of quality of equipment or loss of, maybe an audit that may or may not have happened where they can't account for
$400 for like a headlight for like a vehicle or something like that.
Exactly. And so when you build a more resilient economy where you have you've got your local rancher, you've got different resources. It's not just one person, and it's not just one organization that rises to the top, and then eventually the quality drops, the prices go up and whatnot. No, that's a great point. And so with that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, what has been the reaction maybe from the Bitcoin community on hold or HODL versus transacting in Bitcoin? Has it been good, bad? And, what do you think?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think that's the question. It's at the heart of all of this, is if we can get past this idea that Bitcoin is just a HODL technology. If a Bitcoiner wants to do that, man, and aligned incentives in Bitcoin make it so that guy taking that approach benefits you and I, and that's fantastic. But my encouragement is that it's not just in my best interest for him to HODL and spend, but it's in his own best interest. And so I think that just like we evangelize Bitcoin to people, I think we need to evangelize the parallel system to people. Saifedean made this point again. I'll just keep quoting him because he made a lot of brilliant points when we were talking about it. His point on the HODL versus spend, and he said it in a much more articulate way than I wrote about it. So I'll share his point. I kind of dragged it out a little bit because I wanted to understand have the reader understand the nuance of it. But he puts it this way: when you HODL, you can have 100% of your savings in Bitcoin. When you HODL and spend, you can have 100% of your savings and your checking in Bitcoin. And now maybe it's not 100% of your checking, but every time you find one more bill that you can pay in Bitcoin, that means that now 5% of your checking can be held in Bitcoin, 10% of your Bitcoin or your checking, 50%. So your ability to HODL actually increases with your ability to spend. And think about it. If you develop a local circular economy, or this parallel economy develops, then not only can your personal savings and checking be 100% in Bitcoin, because now all of your expenses can be paid for in Bitcoin. So when you have that money for 30 days or 60 days, I mean, most people, I think not most people, I think a lot of people, that doesn't sound appealing to them because they're like, well, my checking account just always goes to zero. And so that's fine. But there are a lot of people that have some cash balance in their checking account. And so if you have even a small portion of money that stays in your checking account that doesn't always get spent, that means that that's more Bitcoin that you get to hold. Plus, when you're transacting in Bitcoin, then you're not, I think that we equate spending Bitcoin to selling Bitcoin. And that's not the case. I see that all the time in my comments is no, to hold is, even on that video of Saifedean, somebody said, no, if you spend that's like selling. It's not. Maybe if the other person on the other end of the transaction gets it and sells it immediately, okay, then they've got a point. But if I spend Bitcoin and it's just being held by somebody else, how is that that's not being sold onto the market? That's not negatively impacting the price of Bitcoin. And so I think that a lot of people equate those two, and it's a false equivalency. So spending your Bitcoin is not the same as spending your Bitcoin as far as the way that it impacts the price of Bitcoin. I've had a ton of people say, oh my gosh, if people are spending Bitcoin, if everybody listens to you and starts spending Bitcoin every day, imagine the downward pressure on the Bitcoin price. No, it's the opposite. The more people that spend Bitcoin, the more people get to hold Bitcoin. And now don't just think of it like yours and my personal savings and checking account, because you might have a really impressive savings and checking account. Maybe I don't have a very impressive savings and checking account, but I can tell you what, if we get it to the point where businesses can do this, if I as a business, I seek out businesses that accept Bitcoin so that I can make more of my business expenses in it. My business has a fair bit of our treasury in Bitcoin. So we use Bitcoin as a savings technology, just like Michael Saylor. We use it as a savings technology for our business. My business has a lot more cash than I do personally. I'll tell you that right now. Every business owner, their business, because businesses, it takes a lot more money to run a business than your household. Businesses have way more cash in savings and checking than the average individual. That's a typical equivalency for business to individual. Now, if businesses were not only able to have a portion of their savings in Bitcoin, but instead, because there's a robust parallel economy, they would be able to keep 100% of their treasury and 100% of their savings. You're talking about far more powerful hodlers than you or I, than we can do with our personal checking and savings. And so this idea is a really big idea for the person who wants to hodl so the number goes up. I want the Bitcoin number to go up too. And we, unfortunately, we measure it in dollars right now. Someday we're just going to be measuring Bitcoin in buying power. That's how I like to talk about it. I catch myself all the time saying, oh, the price of Bitcoin went up. And then I correct myself. I'm like, the buying power of Bitcoin went up. But there will be a day where we won't talk about the US dollar price. We'll just be able to talk about how much more Bitcoin can buy for you. And if you want Bitcoin to buy more for you, the spending aspect of Bitcoin allows everybody to hodl more. It's really, really important. I think that's my very biased take on it. I don't know. What do you think, Joe? I mean, you've read the book. You've talked about this before. Yeah. What's your take?
No, I'm actually in agreement with you on the spending of Bitcoin in terms of, it becomes someone else who's holding it, right? And at the same time, my biggest issue with, let's say, the Bitcoin community, so to speak, right? I'm not speaking for everybody, but we say things we want to see happen, but we never do anything about it, right? Like you hear, oh, this is going to be the monetary layer for the entire world, and soon everyone's going to be accepting Bitcoin. Yet people don't want to spend it. Two, I don't know a whole bunch of businesses other than tracking through Orange Pill app and others that I go out and personally research who are accepting Bitcoin, and whether it's, do they want to deal with the complications of the taxes or getting an account to set up to do this. And then I think another part of this is we don't realize, I think in the United States, we have a particular view that how our country operates is the way the world operates. And so when we talk about spending Bitcoin, and they're like, well, why would you do that? You can just, go down to the store and you can use your debit card, or, you can just withdraw money from the bank. I think we forget the fact that a large portion of this world is unbanked. And the way to transact and to make purchases is through something that's decentralized. The safest for a lot of those people is to use Bitcoin. And that using that, it gives them a sense of freedom that they may not have, because whether it's, El Salvador obviously adopted it. You see some other countries that are starting to, I think in continent of Africa, I forget which country specifically, that is starting to use Bitcoin to make purchases, and the ability to own that and have that on you that can't be confiscated by anyone. They could take your phone, they could take whatever you have, but unless they have your seed phrase or whatever, they can't confiscate that from you. Mm-hmm. And with most of the world, whether they're unbanked or not, they have phones. A lot of them have phones, and so they can transact using that. So I think that for us, is if we're going to talk about how we can start using Bitcoin and really influence mass adoption, we have to kind of do what your book says and start implementing that ourselves. You got people like yourself. You've motivated me. I've opened my own retail business and started accepting Bitcoin. I've gotten a few orders through Bitcoin. Most is cash, but I understand. No issues. But that's my biggest thing is that if we're going to say something, you need to be out front and leading the way into this effort. I don't know. I obviously more military, grew up in military, and you've been in California, and so I don't know. Do you see a different group of people who are maybe more in line with your thinking than maybe I am exposed to on a daily basis, or?
I'm pretty fortunate that most of my immediate friends and family have all been orange pilled at this point, but none of them I can think of, as far as immediately friends and family, are part of the parallel economy in that sense. They're all hodlers, and they've bought some Bitcoin and they believe in the vision. Okay, Brian, I get it, that sort of thing. But no, I don't think that in California we have like a robust, parallel economy here. We're trying to do it. My wellness business, it's called Salt and Light Wellness. It's actually I'm in the office of one of my places right now. We have 3 locations in Southern California. We accept Bitcoin, but it's rare. Even when a Bitcoiner comes in, like you said, they don't always want to spend Bitcoin. And so that yes, it is an uphill battle. Nobody wants to be the first to adopt something. Everybody wants to be the second to adopt something. That's like the safe place to be. And I just say this, like a lot of Bitcoiners say, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known about Bitcoin in 2010. I would have been all over it. No, you wouldn't have been all over it, because the parallel economy is right in front of you. It's a bigger idea than just like buying Bitcoin in 2010 and holding it till 2024. I get it that you would have made more fiat money if you had done that. But as far as like the revolution, that is in front of you right now. So it's like being presented with Bitcoin as a savings technology in 2010, but you're being presented with Bitcoin as a spending technology in 2024. And yet people are still like, nah, this right now is the phase where you heard about it and you disregarded it. I ask people that all the time. When was the first time you disregarded Bitcoin? Because we all have that time. Like I shared at the beginning.
Yep.
I disregarded it in 2013. By 2014, I was convinced. We all have a story when we disregarded it. If you're hearing about the parallel economy right now and you don't like what we're saying, just understand that this is your disregard it phase. And soon enough, you're going to be on the other side of this. So if somebody's watching that, just understand, just speed up the process. Don't wait till 25 or 26. Like 2024 is where it's at for the parallel economy. And like you said, Joe, you started it. You told me, you're like, hey, I'm going to start my own business with Bitcoin. I'm going to do apparel, and we're going to like, that is exactly what we need to do. We just need to find something to do. If somebody is a dentist, just become the Bitcoin dentist. There's a chapter in the book, after it's named after the term, the cheat code, from Peter McCormick. And he gives credit to somebody else for coining that term, but he's the one that popularized the term. And the cheat code is simple. It's this idea that when you start a business, you just say that you're a Bitcoin version of that business, and it will bring you extra attention. Whether it's extra attention or extra customers, it will in fact work. My barber, I found through Orange Pill app. I have an appointment in a couple weeks. I don't get my hair cut very often.
Yeah.
We're in California. I can look like a homeless person and just blend right in here.
Yeah.
But I found my barber through Orange Pill app. He lives his place is about 20 miles from where I'm at. I've never traveled 20 miles for a haircut before. It's not that far. It's only 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. It's not far, but usually there's a barber shop on every corner. And I usually just go to the one on the corner by my house. The cheat code in this instance is that my new barber gained a customer and other customers from Orange Pill app that are driving by barbershop after barbershop of fiat barbers that were passing up to go to the Bitcoin barber. So he has all sorts of fiat business. He gets all sorts of regular customers, but he's getting customers from cities from 2 or 3 cities away that he was not going to get otherwise. So his business has grown because of that. Now, whether that's a 10% growth or a 40% growth, I don't know. But all I know is that when you're in business and you get new customers, and you're not just talking about any customer, you're talking about high signal, high buying power customers. I mean, that's one of the big ideas here, is that the more Bitcoin customers you get, it might not seem like that big of a deal right now, but I'll ask the question this way, and most Bitcoiners I think will agree. 5 years from now, is fiat going to be in a better place or a worse place? They'll probably say fiat's going to be in a worse place. I don't know anybody that doesn't, that's not into Bitcoin. I don't know any fiat maxis that don't recognize that it's going to be in a better or worse place. Where's Bitcoin going to be? Is it going to be in a better or worse place? It's going to be in a better place, right? So this idea of who has the buying power is only going to become more apparent to businesses. And those people who have been accruing Bitcoin business for the next 5 years have a tremendous head start on all of the businesses that are going to recognize that 5 years from now. So with my business, I'm trying to attract the Bitcoin customers right now, and I'm trying to build up that loyalty to them because I know they're going to have more options 5 years from now of businesses that will accept Bitcoin. It's not going to be people that love Bitcoin, businesses that love Bitcoin that are accepting it. They're just going to be doing it because they know that those are the best customers in the world. And so I want those customers now, and I can build up that loyalty and that relationship with them. So it's really a practical approach. It's a pragmatic approach for businesses. If you want better customers in the future, go seek those customers out right now, because we know what's going to happen. But unfortunately, the average person just wants to wait until it gains a little bit more traction. That's fine. You can do that, but then you're not here for the revolution. If you're here for the revolution, do it right now. And I know Joe's on board because you read the book and you said, I'm starting a business. I went and told my wife, I was like, hey, just look at this message right here. Like she was like, cool. She's like, people are getting it. That's awesome. And that actually helped vindicate me a little bit. My wife, ultra supportive of writing the book. But when you're writing, there's lots of nights where instead of going and getting an hour of TV, watching a show before bed with my wife, I would be on like a writing spree. And so it would cut into some of that time. And so when my wife gets to see that the things that she's sacrificing, time with her husband, that those ideas are getting put out into the world and making a difference, it helps vindicate me a little bit in my own household. So thank you very much for that. She's on board with it because she gets it. She wants a parallel economy for the sake of our children and all that kind of stuff. But man, it's cool to see it really playing out.
Well, I'm glad I could help you get some brownie points that way. I know that's important as a married guy myself. But I think everything kind of came together at the right time, because I'm in the process of transitioning and retiring from the military, and thinking about what's the next phase of my life. And fortunately, I don't have to work. But I have to do something, right? I've been that way my whole life. And my wife was like, hey, just what's your passion? And all this stuff kind of came along at the same time. And your book kind of really highlighted that. And it kind of brought me more to what I want to do. And, I think it's interesting if your barber, I don't know if he's close to a Marine or Marine base or anything like that, but if he wants to get a fresh set of customers who it's a pretty simple cut, it's either bald or a high and tight, he can probably get in early if he moves next to one of the Marine bases down in San Diego or California.
Yeah, I think he's in Orange County. So
maybe El Segundo or something. He'll be he can easy cut, get bald and get some Bitcoin. But I think it's interesting, and one of the things that I've tried to do with my kids, reading your book, all of your books, and Safe and others, something as little as I've started giving my children allowance in sats and Bitcoin. So it's like, hey, great job on report card or whatever. Let me bring my phone over and I'll transfer you some money. And then the funny thing was, right, I started doing it probably right at the bottom of this past cycle, where it was about 16, and now it's at 70, right? And it was like, whoa, what's going on? Like, Dad, the money you gave me is now worth 3 times the amount, like 4 times the amount. What's going on? And so it really got them thinking about Bitcoin, got them thinking about hardness of money, value of money, and got them studying more of it, and not just, it gave them a different view of the world. And obviously, I do my own little propaganda campaign as we're driving into school, dropping them off. And I've got, the Fiat standard playing on audiobook and other things like that. So, I've been kind of pushing it, but I think it's a great point where you either can get on this now, or you can get on the, start the revolution with us, or you can learn about it after the fact, because it doesn't know to do this. And this is the part I've had to try to, talk to my parents about. You don't have to go all in. Like, if you're not comfortable, obviously study it and learn about it. I'm not telling you to buy anything. I'm telling you to study Bitcoin and learn it. But if you want to play around, put $50, $100 into it, put it on a wallet, Lightning wallet, and just do some basic transactions. And as you feel more comfortable, like it's kind of that gateway drug, maybe that starts developing you, and then you start telling other people, and then it kind of grows from there. But I think the ground up, small changes is what I'm trying to do, at least. I think it scares people because you say transact in Bitcoin. We're not trading a whole Bitcoin at a time at this point. Unless you're buying a house, like you're not doing that. So where do you see the future prospects with this? And are you getting a good sign or a good feeling the next 5 or 10 years, this is really going to start catching on, and it's going to be, I know you said kind of that revolution. I know I'm asking you to predict the future, which is impossible, but like we always hear, hey, wait 10 years out, in 2030, Bitcoin is going to be this. And I think anyone who's really into Bitcoin, other than the number go up, folks, don't necessarily care about the price, so to speak. We all want to be worth more, but it's the change that's coming, right? That's what we're hoping for. Do you really, how soon do you think that's actually going to happen?
I think it's a factor of how fast we get out there and spread these ideas. I went and spoke at a meetup in San Diego last week, and we were in a bar, and the bar, like it's just for this meetup. So there was 25, 30 people or whatever. And I guess they've been doing this meetup there for like a few years now. And they have a really good ongoing relationship with the owner of the bar. And the bar didn't previously accept Bitcoin. The guy that started the meetup said, hey, I'm going to bring a group of people, once a quarter or however often they meet. And the stipulation is you have to accept Bitcoin. And so he did. He offered to start accepting Bitcoin. And fast forward to last week when I talked there, the whole thing was about the parallel economy, right? And I'm speaking to a room of Bitcoin maxis. They come to meetups. They've been coming to meet at the same meetup for 3 years or whatever it is now. And they did a question and answer time at the end. And then the bar owner from behind the bar, he was serving everybody. He grabs the microphone and says, yeah, I've actually been surprised because the stipulation was that I was supposed to accept Bitcoin. And I think probably 10% of you guys in this room pay with Bitcoin every time we come here. And so sure enough, I talked to the bar owner at the end of the night, and he goes, I've never had so many people paying Bitcoin to close out their tabs at the end of the night, because this idea hadn't been presented to people, and people were coming up, and I did a book signing, book sale or whatever. And everybody said that these were my first 2 transactions in Bitcoin ever. I paid for my bar tab and I'm buying your book in Bitcoin. I've never done this before. I feel uncomfortable spending my Bitcoin. And then once they do it, they said, wow, that was actually really cool. So I really believe in the idea that if just like we have that zeitgeist moment with Bitcoin of when you buy Bitcoin and you hold it and you're like, wow, that really wasn't that hard. This is kind of cool. That same feeling you get that same feeling. And maybe perhaps even a little bit greater of a sense of that when you spend Bitcoin for the first time, because you realize you're contributing to something that's really important. And I tell you, and I tell people this all the time, if you're like, no, I'm not spending my Bitcoin, but you do feel kind of a compelling spirit to participate. You're like, yeah, but the parallel economy is a cool idea. Don't spend Bitcoin. Just accept Bitcoin. Just participate in the Bitcoin economy by accepting Bitcoin. I'll tell you what, If all you do is earn sats, then that's great. You've done something to participate in the parallel economy. You've created one more node on the parallel economy network. And that means that the more people that accept Bitcoin, the more businesses that accept Bitcoin, that means more businesses can now come onto the parallel economy because there's more places for businesses and people to spend to where they don't have to get out of fiat, right? Or they don't have to get out of Bitcoin to get back into fiat. So that's a good start. And the other factor there is that once you've accepted and earned sats for whatever reason, those sats are easier to spend back into the parallel economy. I've just found that my own experience. I found that with other people saying the same thing, because it's like they get sent to your Lightning wallet. And when your Lightning wallet balance goes from 100,000 sats of Bitcoin that you bought to 500,000 sats because you've earned a bunch of sats for doing haircuts or for a plumbing job or whatever it happens to be, it's just in your checking account. It's in your Bitcoin checking account already. And so it feels like that's the purpose of what you do with it. And then you start to realize, oh, well, like this guy that I'm spending it with, he also holds it too. He's not just going and cashing it out. Most people that accept Bitcoin right now, especially local Bitcoiners that accept Bitcoin, local businesses, they're not using BitPay. They're not accepting Bitcoin to cash it out. They're accepting Bitcoin and they're holding it. And so I think people are starting to see that. And so yes, that's a long roundabout way to answer your question because you asked for a time frame. I think that 5 years from now, things look much, much different. I think 10 years from now is the absolute upper end threshold of when the parallel system has to emerge. And I say that that's the upper end, that's the upper bound of the threshold of when that system can no longer sustain itself, because all the reports are saying right now, and I think this is only going to be accelerated. I think 10 years is when 100% of US tax revenue goes to servicing debt. I think that that's the marker. So think about it like this. If 100% of your income went to paying your credit card bill, you would not be solvent as an individual. But it would actually, insolvency would happen much earlier than that. When 50% of your income goes to your credit card bill, are you solvent? No. When 40% of your income goes to your credit card bill only, just only your credit card, not any of your other expenses, you're not solvent. So like 10 years is when we get to that point where it has to break, because that means that all of our expenses are paid through printing money. And again, our money is based on faith. And when people understand, when the faith is completely broken, so the absolute upper end threshold is 10 years, but I think it's closer in that 4 to 5 years. I think we're talking about a slowly and then suddenly. I talked to Preston Pish about this. I talked briefly to Stephen Lavera about this in Madeira. Both of them completely disagree with me. They think that oh wow, 5 years is that's just too soon. But when you go to the historical and you factor in the historical breaking of empires, and then you go where we are now, we're right on cue for what has to happen. And the big thesis of parallel, it's not a sad thesis. It's not a pessimistic thesis. The thesis of parallel is every time empire collapses, or every time the status quo changes and the paradigm changes, a parallel system emerges as a result of the collapse of empire. In the past, that's happened 100% of the time. The collapse of Rome, it happened. The collapse of the Persian Empire, it happened. The collapse of the Soviet Union, a parallel system always springs up in its wake. Unfortunately, it's very disorganized. It's decentralized, but it's very disorganized. And so as soon as the state regains power 5 years, 10 years later, that parallel system gets reabsorbed into the main system. But this is the optimistic thing about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only parallel system in the history of the world that has a head start on building itself before the collapse of empire. So Bitcoin has been built for 15 years already. The empire hasn't collapsed. If it collapses 5 years from now, we have a 20-year head start on building a decentralized but highly organized parallel system. Humanity has never seen something like that before. So the optimistic thing is there's not going to be a supply chain breakdown. There's not going to be people starving in the streets due to the US superinflation or even hyperinflation, because people will peacefully go over to the better parallel system that runs side by side. How did Weimar Germany If you read Dying of Money, you know the answer to this. How did Weimar Germany fix their hyperinflation? They ran a sister currency next to it. The Reichmark was hyperinflating. The Rentenmark was a pegged currency with a finite supply, at least for a little bit of time.
Mhm.
And so they said you can use either currency. They fixed their hyperinflation because people naturally didn't want the hyperinflating currency. They used the fixed currency, and that fixed their economy for a period of time. That same kind of natural gradual transition will happen when it comes, at least in my estimation, will happen with Bitcoin, because it's already being built. We're not developing it in 2027 as a response to the US becoming insolvent. It's being built right now. So if you want a better version of the parallel economy when the empire collapses, start building it right now.
Awesome. Well, Brian, I don't think there's a better way to end the podcast than with that. I think it's great. I think that's a great way to end, and a great analogy for what's coming forward or coming next in the next couple of years, and having that already being built instead of being built after the collapse is awesome. Well, Brian, I'll obviously, I'll put the links to your books and Orange Pill app in the description. Are you going to be, or is anyone can find you? Bitcoin Nashville or other upcoming events you'll be heading out to?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be speaking at a conference in Kansas. It's like a hedge fund thing, but they're really into Bitcoin. And so if you guys are in Kansas, I'm gonna be out there in a month or so, or in July. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to make it to Nashville yet. That's not sure about that being on or off the table. But I'm in Southern California, so if you live in Southern California and you're on Orange Pill app, hit me up. If you're traveling to Southern California this summer and you want to grab lunch, or you're going to the beach and you want to hang out, hit me up. I mean, you can find me on Orange Pill app, and you can find me local.
All right, great, Brian. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.